Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast. Terry DuPont is the founder of DuPont Advisory Group, a group dedicated to providing comprehensive services to successful business owners, medical, and other professionals. Terry has top-of-the-table status in the prestigious International $1 Million Roundtable, placing him among the top 0.1% of all professional financial advisors in the world. Terry's philosophy is, I've learned that I grow and prosper more by focusing on the success of others, rather than fretting over my own. Terry is a certified financial professional with the Institute of Financial Wellness, an advisor for the Power of Zero Taxes in Retirement, chartered retirement plans specialist, certified wealth preservation planner, and certified philanthropic developer. On the podcast, Terry brings together experts in their field who have succeeded in building their business to share their secrets with you. And now, here's your host, Terry DuPont.
Hey, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success. I'm Terry DuPont, your host, and today we're very privileged and honored to have Jody Grunden, CPA from Fort Wayne, Indiana, as our guest. Jody, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Terry. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Jody is a CPA, but he probably doesn't do what most CPAs do that you're aware of. He's very unique, and I won't steal his thunder. I'll let him share it all with you. Can you tell us a little bit about you and why you started your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you the long version. You can cut me short anytime you'd like. But with my career, my wife and I actually started our careers at the same time. She's an estate planning attorney, and I was opening up a CFO practice, or actually a CPA practice at the time. And with that, the journey before that, I worked in public accounting for a couple of large firms. Decided, hey, that just wasn't really what I wanted to do. Too many hours, not enough family time, and then so I thought the corporate world was going to be a lot better for me, and it was a lot better in a lot of ways, but it was so boring. It was like basically Groundhog Day over and over again. So same thing over and over. It wasn't super exciting. And so, here I've got an accounting degree. What do I do? Did I make a bad mistake? And so I thought, let the entrepreneur, go out. And so I decided to open up an office for a smaller regional firm. About a year into it, I realized, I really need to be my own boss. And so I started the Summit CPA Group at that point. And so my wife left her law practice, started her own practice at the same time. I started it. And so we kind of went on a limb, had a couple kids, and with that, the journey started, right? And so we opened up Summit as a traditional CPA firm, did tax work, write-up work, just the regular stuff that you see CPAs doing. And right away, it was like, this isn't me. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to really kind of help small businesses. I wanted to help them grow, help them be successful, and just doing a tax return or doing a financial statement for them periodically, it just wasn't it. And so I thought, how can we actually change the model here so that we could do that? And then also change the model so that we can hire and retain really great talent and not burn them out with a traditional tax season. So we started the concept up, which is called the Virtual CFO Services. We were the pioneers of Virtual CFO Services back, 20 plus years ago. And we really started providing that monthly counseling for business owners, being with them, showing them a financial statement, talking to them for about 15 minutes about it, and then taking it and showing, hey, here's how this is going to impact the future. Here's what your next 12 months is going to look like. Your cash, your debt, your revenue, your expense, net income. Here's what your taxes are going to look like. And so the business owners really had a really great insight throughout the entire year, what their cash position is going to look like, where they're going, all that kind of stuff that really large companies can afford a lot of me, type of thing, where these small business owners, it was giving them the opportunity to succeed, because again, we all know that, as a great plumber doesn't mean that person's going to be a great, business owner, and with that, they may or may not understand finance, how that works. And with a person from our team on board, it really helped out. And so that was the concept we put in play back in 2000 and actually 2004, a long time ago. So we've done it for almost 20 years. And Since then, it's been great. It was a slow go at first because nobody knew what virtual CFO meant, right? And so, you hear the concept. What does that mean? Are you real? Back then the internet wasn't even going very strong, and so we were trying to figure it out. And the analogy of building that airplane while it's flying in the air, type of thing. And with that, many bumps along the way. A lot of times you just want to give up and hang your hat and try something different. But it was perseverance that really kind of forged us through that. We created a lot of different things that no one had ever done before. The virtual CFO concept. We went to subscription-based billing model for services back in 2007. So we've been doing that for almost 16 years, where we don't send invoices out to clients. We just simply zap their account every Monday. We created which Monday is now my favorite day of the month or day of the week. Obviously, with that, because we've grown, tremendously. And so, we went completely remote in 2013, way before the pandemic. So our team has been fully remote. We've doubled our size every 3 years since 2010. And so if you kind of think through that, we started out bootstrap back in 02, and then we built it up to a little over $10 million last year in reoccurring revenue, and end up merging with a larger accounting firm, top 100 accounting firm out of St. Louis. And now we are their virtual CFO arm. So we are providing virtual CFO services for their clients and the nation, on a national basis as we were before, but we are their arm, with the goal going from 10 million to 5xing that to go to 50 million over the next 3.5 years. So super exciting, really motivating. And so the journey went from bootstrapping to merging, quasi, selling the firm, and then, really kind of working through and really it's dreams and goals that we were hoping from day one. Our goal was to change the way that people think about accounting, and we've done everything we could possibly do to make that happen.
I'm glad you brought that up, and that's awesome. I've thought that small business owners needed someone like you for quite some time, and I'm glad that you're filling the gap or helping others fill the gap, quite frankly. What's the biggest challenge you faced through all this, you think?
The biggest challenge that we faced was that, we thought that initially we thought, what, we can provide this service, and we're gonna this flat fee value-based billing model. So we're gonna up so that, hey, we're gonna charge you X amount of dollars per week. It's gonna be reoccurring, and it's and basically the only way it'll change if scope changes or the size of your company changes. Some variables in there. The problem is we always devalued our service. We always priced it too low. We thought nobody would ever pay $10,000 to have us with doing their stuff a year, and it's like, well, we were closing like 80-90% of our deals. We're like, oh, this is great. Problem is, we're closing 80-90% of our deals, and so we were undervalued completely, and so we had to continue increasing it. And each time we increased, we thought, there is no way again someone's going to do this, and it was a constant no way, no way. Now our average fee is close to $80,000 a year, and we still are closing about 40 to 50% of the leads that come through. And with that, the demand's there. I think we found a great sweet spot there. Our typical client's about $1 million. Average client is starting at $1 million. Average clients around $5 million. We've got some really large clients, but that's the exception. We've got a few small clients. That's also the exception. We found a great sweet spot that we really wanted to help those businesses really, get to that next level. And so I'd say pricing was the biggest thing, and undervaluing what we did. And once we figured that out, things just ramped up. It took us, here we're a CPA firm. We're teaching people how to do this, and the cobbler's shoe type of analogy here. We were suffering from that same issue. We weren't super profitable at first. It was 10 years of, man, tough. This is tough. Is this ever going to be successful? Was this a bad move? Did we screw up? The new concept here. And then once we priced it right, then everything just started going, and we were able to afford great talent and great people, and really work a lot better, and really make things go well.
Yeah, as you're probably aware, I mean, the accounting industry and the financial services industry are both commoditized, and most CPAs don't value their services because they're doing the typical grind that anybody can do. They can go anywhere, any CPA firm, and get. And so it's just adding value to be able to do what you've done. Yeah. Um, your firm, as I understand, your firm was the first fully distributed accounting firm.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little more about that, and how do you know that that would be successful?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as we're actually going through, and we actually had our truly very first virtual client, which means that they weren't in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was one of those things. We actually got that client that was in Rhode Island, and it was like, wow, how are we going to service this client in Rhode Island? This was probably back in 2000, probably 2010ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And with that, we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? Video was really choppy on the internet at that time. It was like WebEx, and they're really sketchy, nothing like it is today. And so we kind of figured out how to do it. So we worked with a combination of phone and through video conferencing, and we kind of figured it out. Well, the cool thing about the whole concept is that the firm that we were working with was one of the first 25 firms in the world to ever be fully remote, being fully distributed. They never ever had an office. And they were a firm of about 60 employees. They were a web design company that made websites for extremely large companies like the NBA, the WWF, or WWE, all that kind of stuff. And so you'd know all their clients, for sure. They're really name brand, and we kind of learned from them, how to make this work. Hey, to be a fully remote company, you've got to have continuous meetings every week. You've got to make it fun. You've got to have events outside of work where people can come to and gather. And there's a lot of great things and great tips that we learned over the couple of years before we actually decided to go remote. And then we decided to pull that trigger. It was like one of those deals that I thought, this could be a great opportunity for us to have an opportunity to grow, because you can only grow so much in a small city. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, 300,000 people is not really a small city. But what I mean by that is, we had aspirations of getting really big, and it was like the only way we could do that is we poached all these great people from other accounting firms. We didn't want to do that. And so we decided, hey, let's do this remote thing. I remember at the time we had 18 folks on the team. We had stand-up meetings. We had an office that, I actually owned the building and everything. And we're in these stand-up meetings where we start with a joke, of the day. That's how we start every one of our meetings. And I got up. I was so nervous. I was like, hey, I got this great idea. Guys, we're going to go fully remote. And everybody was just kind of waiting there. It's like, okay, where's the punchline coming? What's he mean? And with that, it was like one after the other say, no, we can't do that. Their jaws dropped. There's no way we can go remote, because internet, because all these different excuses that they made, similar to the pandemic. Nobody thought they could go remote until they actually had to go remote, and then they figured out how to do it. And that's exactly what happened. So I thought, what? I'm not going to lose my entire team, because nobody wanted to go remote. My partner was like, no way, we're not going to do it. And so, I decided, well, let's go ahead and build onto the building. So I took a building, remodeled it, spent about $100,000, but tore out all the walls. It took about 6 to 8 weeks, in construction. Construction, they say it's going to take 4, and it takes 12. The same thing happened with that. And what happened was that I had to kick everybody out because the construction was so loud. They had to work from home for a short period of time. And with that, within the first 6 weeks, everybody's like, we love this remote thing. Do you mind if we work remote? And like, after I'd spent like $100,000, I'm like, so I never actually got our interior signs up in our building. I got the outside sign, but I never even put the interior. We never had an open house or anything because nobody came back. Actually, there's about 3 people that said, hey, we can't do it. We live out in the country and have internet. That was work that would work well. And so what happened was that we did that. So all these great offices with TVs and this really nice office space never got used. And so I had to I kept it for about a year before we fully went remote. I kept about a year thinking, oh, is this going to happen? Are they going to come back? Is this going to work? Because it's kind of like my safety net, right? And after that, I thought, what? Let's go ahead and rent it out. We rented it out, and guess what? The people that rented it out was an IT company. They came in. They tore all the walls out again. And they redid it again. So it was like what we actually created never, ever had a body put into it. Never was actually used. And from there, we decided, we're not looking back. And we started hiring people all across the country. And the neat thing about it was when we went remote, we're like, how do you recruit people in California from Fort Wayne? How do you do that? So we were super heavy on the internet. We did a lot of content marketing. If you typed in virtual CFO, we'd pop up anywhere in the nation. And because we were one of the first, right, or if not the first. And so, with that, how do you get those people? And it was just kind of out happenstance. Forbes wrote an article, the top 125 virtual companies, and this was back, I don't know, 04, 05, somewhere in there. And we were on it. We were on this list with like Apple and Microsoft and all these different companies you heard of. It was like Summit CPA Group. I was like, well, how is that possible? And the funny part about it was, as soon as that article hit, I remember being in a meeting with one of our clients, because at that point I actually did client service work, and with that we had one of my team members on the call, and we're talking to the client. All of a sudden, my inbox it was getting spammed. I was getting a resume every about 2 seconds. It just kept coming up and up. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I turn it off? I couldn't figure out how to. It was so distracting. The client's like, hey, do you need to take care of that? I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. Just ignore it. And then afterwards, the team member was on there. Do I have anything to worry about with my job? Like, no, I have no clue what's going on. And we found out that's what happened. Once that article hit, tons of great people were sending resumes in to fill the positions. And so from there, we actually said, hey, let's figure this out. And we were getting tons of resumes, people looking for remote work that you would never think about it. Great people, CPA firm owners, partners in big firms, all these different great people from industry, all these different folks are looking for that remote work. And with that, we just had that opportunity. So we took advantage of it right away, and we just hired from there on out. And we grew that 18-person team to about 75 people today. And so, and we continue to grow.
Yeah, my story isn't quite as like yours, but we in my business as a group had a lot of clients start to move to different states, Texas, Florida, et cetera, right? And so I was kind of forced into remote. And back then we didn't have anything like you mentioned. I mean, I was using this thing called join.me that had had no video, but I could show my screen and we talk on the phone, right? And it progressed from there. But yeah, so interesting. That's very interesting. Tell me, Jody, what is something that you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Wow, something that I know now that I wish I knew when I started. That's a great question. Thinking about that, let me think through that here for a sec. I'd say a lot of it was, when we looked at success, when I first started, I even prior to that, I worked in construction when I was in college, and I sold knives when I was in college. I did everything just to get through. It was one of those things that took me 7 years to get through college, both my wife and I, because we just work in multiple jobs and you're really kind of working through it with the end goal that we wanted to one day make $100,000. That was kind of like the goal. Hey, we had this tangible number that we thought, hey, it's going to solve all of our problems if we hit that number, right? And so we had that in our mind, and I remember being in a construction site one day, and I was electrician, base working through college there, and I'm talking, everybody's like, hey, what do you want to do? Blah blah blah. And I go, hey, I want to make $100,000 a year, and I got laughed out. Everybody's like, oh, there's no way you could ever make that. No possible way, And they're throwing all these examples. I was like, it just kind of set me back. It's like, wow, I can't believe everyone else didn't have aspirations like what I had, in making, what I thought was something that could easily be attainable. Now, it wasn't easily attainable for sure. It was a lot of hard work to get there. But, with that, the thing that I did, I looked at that as being success, right? I thought, hey, that would be success to me. And so once I got that, once we went through that and I worked hard and really kind of build the model and the virtual CFO and really working through, I got to that 100. That wasn't success anymore. Now success was, hey, I want to make 200, and then the number changed, and then it was like I got to that. I was like, well, I want to make more, and it was an ever-ending thing, a never-ending thing. Success, I defined as a dollar amount. Really truly wasn't success. That the definition, really wasn't it. Success I look at as just simply being an ongoing thing, trying to achieve success, trying to achieve the next level, trying to do better, trying to have, trying, not to be hit my 35th wedding anniversary. No, I want to hit 50. Then when I hit 50, I want to hit 75. So success is just that ongoing venture journey, and it's not really the destination, I guess is my point there. And I really looked at that completely wrong, because I thought, hey, once we built this firm, if we can get to that $1 million mark in revenue, top line revenue, we're going to be considered successful. I got there. It's like, well, that wasn't success. And then it was like 5 million. Then my partner's like, hey, 5 million, all the world's problems are going to be solved. 5 million, it's like, nope. All the world's problems are, we have new problems now. And so, just working through that obstacle. When we got to the 10 million, we thought, oh, this is great. And we thought, you know what, we're going to sell when we get to the 20 million. That was the key, selling when we get to 20. We got to that 10 million. And we got somebody that said, gave us an opportunity and basically, an offer we couldn't refuse when we merged. And with that, it was like, wow, is this success? And it's like, no, they didn't look at that as success. They looked at it as the beginning when we merged. Hey, we want to take your practice and build to 50 million. So it's like, okay, that must be success. And so as we journey towards that, it's like, well, we're going to hit 50 million. We might not get it in 3.5, 4 years. We might get it in 5 years. We're going to hit there. And I know that once we get there, again, it's the journey. It's not the end. And I guess I took that completely wrong and really didn't understand that clearly until I was through the venture. And a lot of people get that confused. Hey, do I want to? Is being a millionaire, is that successful? No. That's just a destination, right? Yeah. And so success is that journey.
Yeah, I'm glad you expounded on that, because that was my next question, how you defined it.
Oh,
and so kudos to you. And I agree with you. I mean, every time you hit, a goal, I mean, it's the journey. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the journey, because the destination always comes, and then what you do, right? So thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for everyone to know and at least hear, right?
Yeah, and Terry, I think if you add on to that, I think if you look at regrets, because regrets would be the opposite of success, right? And if you look at regrets, I would say going through, if I could do anything over again, you mentioned that question again, there's really anything that I would do over again. And the reason I say that is because I learned so much in all of the different mistakes that was made throughout that entire journey, that, I don't know if I would be where I'm at today if I wouldn't have hit those. If I, even going back from the fact that, hey, if my parents would have paid for all my college and I wouldn't have had to work hard to get through there, and I might not be where I'm at today because of that. Yeah, it was tough and it was hard and it was one of those things. It's like, what? When you don't have food on, when you have nothing in the refrigerator at all, and you're eating popcorn for dinner, that's tough. We were there. That's a tough thing. And so, but that got us to where we're at. And so there's every one of those little bumps, every one of those little miscues that we had along the way. I really wouldn't trade it for anything. And I think that's what really got us to where we're at today, and what's going to get us to that next level.
Yeah, it allowed you not to take things for granted.
100%.
Yeah. Jody, is there something that you share with each and every client that you have?
And can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what philosophy or concept do you feel that's important, so important, that you share it with each and every new client, and maybe reiterate it as you go forward?
Yeah. So when we started the CFO practice, it was one of those things that what do you talk about? We can't, because we're meeting with clients on a weekly basis, or in some cases it's every other week. So we're meeting with them all the time. What do I just show up and start talking? What do I need to talk about? And so what we had to do is we had to come up with, hey, what's a commonality amongst all these small businesses that could really help them out? And so we broke it out and we called it profit focused accountings. And what it is, it's centralized on 4 main concepts. The concepts are metrics that you need to look at. One is cash metric. Then we have a production metric, a financial metric, and then a pipeline metric. And you really need all 4 of them to work in harmony in order to be a successful business owner. And so when we actually talk about it, we focus initially on the cash concept and say, you know what, and we simplify it. We make it easy for the small business owner to understand it. I don't want to talk over somebody's head. I don't want to talk underneath them. I want to talk with them and have a good conversation, something they can remember. And so with that, a lot of people ask, well, cash is the first one, right? How much cash do you need to make at all times? And so we tell clients, you need 10% of your revenue for a service-based business. 10% of revenue, easily calculated. If I'm $1 million company, $100,000, what does that equate to? Well, if you do the math, I'm not going to go through the math, it equates to 2 months worth of expenses. And then I say, you know what, up to 30%. And so what does 30% mean? Well, 30% means 6 months of expenses. And so, with that, again, something they can easily calculate in their head. Hey, I need between $100,000 to $300,000 in the bank as my safety cushion. Now, how much, how do I determine that? But then I throw a bunch of factors up there. Well, if you've got a lot of recurring revenue, you need closer to 10%. If you're relying on one client, you need close to 30%. All these different factors to make it really easy for them to say, you know what, I think we need about 15%. And so that's the first thing we look at. Hey, define your risk tolerance there and how much cash you need in the bank. Because when I give advice, or when our CFOs give advice to clients, it really the same, so two different clients, the same question could be two different answers, and a lot of it's really based on how much cash they have available. So, is that, did that business development person just show up and they're the best thing you've ever had? The person you've been looking for the longest time. If you got no cash in the bank, you can't take that risk. If you got 10 to 30%, then you can take the risk. And so that's that big part there. So I would say cash is the number one thing. And then the second one, then of course you need to, then the second one you need to have is really, you need to find what drives your revenue. What are the non-financial things that drive your revenue? Because every one of our clients, we need to build that forecast, that 12-month look, minimum of 12 months. A lot of times it's 3 years and going forward. But it's always based on non-financial information, things that I can control. And what I mean by that, if I'm let's say I'm a truck repair company. I use this analogy all the time because it's a client that I actually worked with for years. With that, when we met within our meetings there, we're talking about how many trucks do you have in inventory, because they were a truck repair company. How many trucks do you have in inventory? How many trucks did you put out the last month? It was 5 or 10. What was your average per truck? So we had these things, that variables they can control. How many trucks do you think you're going to push out this next month based on it? You think you're about 6 or 7. And then we talked about that, and boom, that then triggered our forecast and made, adjusted our revenue numbers. And so now we have what we call dynamic forecasts. And so it's something that's going to be changing every single month based on what life actually happens. And so then we can flip it over and say, you know what, based on the net income right now, you're going to owe Uncle Sam at the end of the year X amount of dollars, and we've got this amount set aside in our tax savings account there, for that. Or it could be that, hey, we had a bad turn. Now the taxes are going to go down. We can actually pull some money back out of the tax reserve account and use it for fund, basically operating cash. And it was just one of those dynamic conversations that we could have. And when we created this forecast based on non-financial indicators, the financial statement side of it, just basically takes it. Once we build this really cool forecast and we're managing it, we want to compare it to what other folks in the industry are looking at. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to fool ourselves and have a McDonald's restaurant and say, we're going to have a 20% bottom line, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do all this great, fantastic stuff. And then you look at McDonald's and it's like, well, their bottom line is only like 4% on average. It's like, well, we've got some corrections we need to do. We need to change our cost of sales to make it more realistic to what the industry is holding and that sort of thing. So we're adjusting things based on the industry. Sometimes we're saying, we're going to do better than the industry. Sometimes we're going to do worse, but we actually look at it to make sure it's kind of one of those, basically checks and balances for us. And then the fourth one there is the pipeline. And so for a lot of service-based companies, they create this really great forecast, like a lot of people call budget, whatever you call it, are super dynamic, but you've got to actually shore up the next 3 months. And what I mean by that is, what's under contract? What do you have under contract right now? And what do you have in the pipeline that has a likelihood of closing? And so that's going to allow you to adjust the next 2 or 3 months accordingly. So you don't want to forecast this big number here in the next 3 months. We have really nothing going on in the pipeline. That's suicide. You don't want that. And so you need to make sure you adjust your near term. And we always say the next 2 to 3 months based on what you currently have in that pipeline. And so as you see, when we're constantly talking about those 4 different levers all the time, the client's really getting a good grasp on how to really operate their business and what they should be looking for. Cash, your production metrics, financial statement comparing the industry, and then also the pipeline to shore everything up.
Okay, excellent. That is good for everybody to know. That's excellent. Jody, what's a mistake that many people make that's hard to undo as it relates to your business, your clients?
Well, I'd say the biggest mistake really is it's hard to undo is getting in the habit of draining your bank account to zero in cash. We see a lot of clients that think, I have to get rid of all my cash at the end of the year so I don't pay taxes. That to me, that's pretty silly. That's the wrong way of looking at it. Actually, taxes is one of your biggest KPIs. The more you pay in taxes at the lowest amount you can pay, but the more you pay, the better, the more successful you are, because you're really building a company, building that cash. And so I would never look at it and say at the end of the year, hey, I've got to spend all this money down here so I don't have to pay taxes, because that's really hurting yourself. And so I would say getting out of that mentality. The mentality should be, hey, here's what we need to build up in cash. We can pull everything else outside, over and above that outside, and put it in my own pockets. But let's make sure the company is solid first. Because it's amazing, especially going through the pandemic, all the folks that had the philosophy, hey, let's burn our cash, don't have anything. Well, what happened was they got in severe trouble. They got in a situation where, then it's like, oh, the economy, oh, everything happened to me. And it's like, no, everything that happened to you, you caused it. You didn't build your company to a position where it can withhold some, if not all of that. And with a lot of our clients, the conversations, it wasn't, we've got over 100 clients, that we're working with on a regular basis. We're meeting with them, modeling. When the pandemic hit, for a lot of them, because they have an average of 15% of their revenue in the bank on average with our client base, it wasn't emergency. It was like, okay, what happens here? What happens here? What do we need to do if this happens? So it was more scenario planning versus, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Our biggest client left, we have to lay people off, and then a lot of knee-jerk reactions happen. When you have that cash in the bank, it really helps you make those solid decisions, and really, it gives you that the chance to make those decisions, the time to think through it, not just simply the knee-jerk reaction. So I would say that's probably the number one thing.
That's very good advice. Everybody should have that. Jody, just wondering, is there anything else you wish to share that we didn't talk about yet?
I think the other thing, the one thing that if you're an entrepreneur, and you're struggling and all that kind of stuff, just be persistent, stay focused. There's always look for the positive. And I guess I would say I'm an over optimistic person, super optimistic. I don't ever see failure as happening. I just see it as a roadblock. And if you can see it in the same manner, hey, how can we adjust all these different obstacles? How can we get over this hump? What's the way to, there's going to be something around the corner, and we need to really kind of build to that. So it's not one of those things where you're just, I can't think of the terminology for it, but where you're naive. You don't want to be naive about it, but you want to have a really focused thing. Build some cash, work through difficulties, make those little obstacles, those big obstacles into small obstacles, because you've got the cash to go through it, and just persevere through it, and work through it, and work. And I would love to say that everybody's going to come out successful with that, but I think your chances are much greater if you don't have that safety blanket. Hey, if it doesn't work, I'm going to do this. It's like, well, that's a great backup plan, but really kind of focus through it and work through the challenges and make them into opportunities.
Excellent. Next to last question, Jody.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in your career, in your life, and with all of your success, what do you think is your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge always lays ahead, right? And so I guess the biggest challenge for me is, I've set we merged, like I said, in 2000, about a year and a half ago, and we got another 3.5 years at that $5 million or $50 million mark, and so that's obviously a goal that I'm working towards. Once we hit that goal again, what's the next thing? Because that's not success. That's just a leg in the journey. And I guess at that point, do I want to continue on and go for that next goal? Maybe the next goal is $100 million. Who knows what we said at that point? Do I want to do something completely different? All those things we'll have to determine at that point. And I think the fear is, hey, is my second half of my life going to be equal to my first half? And so, with that in mind, I'm always looking to say, my second half of my life is going to be even better than my first half. And I got to figure out how that's going to happen. Because the one thing I don't want to do, and I found out the hard way, is I don't want to sit around and watch TV, read books, and just watch myself just kind of like shrivel up over time. I want to actually be doing something with my mind and really working towards it. And so, whether that's continuing on, which there's a high likelihood that will be the case. Or if I decide to go a different venture, I'm going to make it the best that I can make it. And like I said, that second half of my life, I want it to be better than my first.
Great. Jody, I'm really thrilled that you came on. I mean, this is one of my best podcasts, I have to tell you. You've been excellent.
Oh, thanks, Terry.
Kudos to you. Okay. Where can our audience go to learn more about you?
Yeah, feel free to, you can either, if you have a question or want to hop on, drop me an email. That's fine. It's Jody, Jody, at summitcpa.net. That's .net, not .com. I didn't want to spend the money on the .com way back when. Or just pop on our website, www.summitcpa.net. And you can definitely find us there. I'm on LinkedIn. You can look us up there. I'm all over the place. If you just Google my name, you'll see a lot of different things. Content marketing was a big driver for us from the very beginning, and we've got a lot of literature out there that feel free to use, and hopefully it helps you make those solid decisions.
Jody, it's been great having you on the show, and I'm sure our audience is going to love it as well, or is loving it. So come back next week, folks. Better business, better life, building on your success. Jody, thanks for being here. It's a great show.
Thank you, Terry.
All right.
This has been the Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success podcast. If you have questions about creating tax-free wealth and income, forward-looking tax mitigation, strategic risk mitigation, wealth preservation and legacy planning, and advanced financial management, go to DuPontAdvisory.com or email Terry@DuPontAdvisory.com.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.